welcome to Sarah's Stamping Retreat. Today we're going to be using this Inky Bouquet stamp set from Altenew to make a watercolour card. So you'll have to excuse my stamp platform. I used Days on ink with it and it's stained the top, but it doesn't stop it from working, so we'll go ahead and use it. So I've got a piece of watercolour cardstock here, and this one's actually from Crafter's Companion. I like it because it's quite smooth and I want to stamp on it. So I'm going to arrange my stamp. This piece of watercolour cardstock is about 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, but I'm going to cut it down afterwards. So then I want to heat emboss this. So I'm going to use my VERSAMARK ink to ink that up, and I'm going to make sure I push it down quite firmly to get a good impression, because obviously even though it's quite a smooth watercolour paper, it is still more rough than normal cardstock. So I'm going to actually put that down again just to make sure that I get all those lines on it nicely. So then I'm going to cover this with some of the Altenew Crystal Clear embossing powder, because I want to do kind of a bit of a resist technique on this today. So you might just be able to see that. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it properly on camera. So then I'm going to melt that embossing powder. So you might just be able to see that I've got that embossed on there now. So then I'm going to watercolour it, but I'm not going to use any fancy watercolours or anything. I'm just going to use some ink pads that I've already got in my stash. So I'm just covering this with some water. And I'm covering the whole thing. And then I'm going to start with some of the leaves. So I've got this set here of Green Meadows ink. So I'm going to use the Sweet Leaf and the Just Green, I think. So I'm going to put a bit of each onto here. It's just one of my acrylic blocks. And then I'm just going to mix a small amount of water in with it. And then I'm just going to dab it onto the water. So this isn't a precise technique or anything you need any skill for. It's supposed to look a bit messy. I'm just using the lighter colour first and the darker colour just to add a little bit of extra dimension at the base of the leaves. All that ink's just going to kind of flow out a little bit. That's kind of the point of this resist method, is that then you get the nice kind of outline of the leaves where all the paint's kind of flowed around a bit. So I'm going to clean that off and put another colour on. So I'm going to use the Pinkalicious and the Razzleberry to colour this flower here. I'm going to go all over and cover that in the Pinkalicious. I'm not being careful because the lines are kind of like just appearing there. And then I'm going to add in some of this Razzleberry to just add a little bit of dimension. So I'm not doing anything technical here at all. And I use some of that for these tiny flowers here as well. The next colours I'm going to use are the Caribbean Sky and the Persian Blue. And actually that's a bit lighter than I really wanted it. That's fine because we can go back in with some darker colours. So I'm actually going to use the Persian Blue as my lighter colour. And then I'm going to bring in the Sapphire as my darker colour. As you can see, it's much more vibrant. This method does work better with more vibrant colours because the lines show up better. And then I'm going to use the Rouge and the Crimson from this pack. And I'm going to do this rose in there. I'm going to leave that to dry for a little while. So then I've left this to dry, and now I'm just going to paint around the outside of the flower with some water, and then we can add some of the blue. You can see I've started here, so I'm going to add some blue around the outside to create a bit of an outline. and just help that stand off the page, because at the moment it's quite pale and I like it to pop a little bit more. And I'm using the Persian blue. I'm just going to pick some of that up on my paintbrush. Just kind of dab it. You can see as I dab it on, I'm moving it around a bit, but the water's also moving it around a bit as well. Now I'm just going to mix just the rest of this that I've got on here with some water so that it goes a bit looser. And I'm just going to paint around that as well so that it kind of softens it out a little bit. Then there's our finished watercolour piece, and I'm going to dry that under like a book to make it go flat again. And you can see I am not the person to look to for like skilled watercolouring tips, but I think this is a nice easy way to get a watercolouring look with supplies that you probably already have on hand if you're new to watercolour and just want to kind of test it out a little bit. So then I've cut this panel down, so I've got a 5.5 by 4.25 inch top folding card blank. I've got this piece of pastel blue cardstock that is from Paperbox Limited, and that is 5 by 3.75 inches. And then I've cut this down to 4.75 by 3.5 inches to go on top of that. And then for the sentiment, I'm going to use this Happy Birthday, which you can see is really well used. It's from this birthday greetings stamp set from Altenew, and this is one I use absolutely loads because I love all the difference and things in it. But this is probably my most used stamp in the set as well. So I'm just going to heat emboss that. So I'm stamping it with my VERSAMARK ink, and then I'm going to use my Altenew Pure White embossing powder. Then I'm going to go cut that down. So I feel like when I'm creating a card, I like to change my mind a lot. So I went for this initially because I really like the font on it. But actually when I do that, it looks fine, but it kind of obscures this flower quite a lot. So actually I ended up going for this sentiment, which is still from the same set, but it's just slightly thinner so that wherever I put that, it's just not going to obscure as much of the image. So I'm just gluing my layers together. So I'm going to add some fine tape to the back of this panel. I'm just deciding whether I want it up that way or that way. I think I quite like it with the blue flower at the top. And then I'm going to pop some foam pads behind this and pop it up on there. And then I might just use some of these enamel dots, the cherry blossom ones from Altenew, just to add a bit of pink. So then there's our card finished. I hope you enjoyed today's project. If you did, I'd appreciate you clicking like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's card are listed in the description below, and there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.